Tonight, a teaser about what Donald Trump plans to tell the Supreme Court. And at stake is his name staying on the ballot in November. The former president's lawyers appear before the Supremes this week. And today, they gave us a sneak peek of sorts about how they plan to sway the justices. Now, it's a pretty unoriginal argument that his lawyers have made over and over again. The people, not the people entrusted to uphold the law, should ultimately decide this. Joining me tonight to talk through some of the Supreme Court's eventual decision-making and what it means for voters everywhere is Washington Post columnist EJ Dionne and veteran journalist and longtime Fox News correspondent Geraldo Rivera. EJ, we wanted to have you on because you have, interestingly here, changed your mind about this very question of whether Donald Trump should be taken off the ballot if he is the nominee. Why did that happen?
Well, when the Colorado court ruled him off the ballot last December, I was very skeptical. And my thinking then was the practical thing and probably the better thing for the long run, I thought then, was let the people decide this. If they vote Donald Trump down again, we will settle a very big issue in public life. And that's the sort of the road to stability. Then I started looking at the plain language of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says that anyone who took an oath to uphold the Constitution and engages in insurrection or rebellion against it, or gives aid and comfort to those who do, are ineligible to be president. And then to hold any office in the government. And then I read historians, listened to them, to lawyers, and it's very clear that the Section 3 is designed precisely to disqualify from the presidency someone who engaged in exactly the behavior Donald Trump did, that Trump effectively disqualified himself by what he did in the run-up to January 6th and on January 6th itself. And this isn't a partisan view. In fact, I think the partisan view for Democrats would be keep Trump on the ballot. He is the weakest candidate. For me, this is sort of being true to what the people who passed that amendment back in 1866 intended when they passed it. And so I think he is plainly ineligible under Section 3, and that's what the court should say.
So, Geraldo, that sounds like originalism to me. If the plain text of the 14th Amendment says what it says, shouldn't conservatives be the ones saying, well, we got to follow it?
I totally disagree. With all due respect, EJ was right when he first had the opinion that the courts should not have this ability to do the removal, the profoundly damaging to the 1.4 million people who voted for Trump from Colorado in 2020, denying them that you're killing democracy to save it. By what court has Donald Trump been found guilty of inciting a riot? By what court has he been guilty of inciting an insurrection? There's been no finding. He was tried in the House of Representatives. They sent it to the Senate. The Senate tried him. He was acquitted of exactly what this insurrection incitement is. He was acquitted. There's been no finding. This is lawfare. This is substituting legal process for political gains. Keeping him off the ballot because you're afraid you can't beat him in a general election. I do not support Donald Trump. I think what Donald Trump did in the days leading up to January 6th and the riots of January 6th was appalling. That's why I turned my back on him. That does not mean the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which was designed for President Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy and the other people who were truly in insurrection against the government of the United States, should be banned from running for office. This does not mean a political candidate in this day and age. I think this is a really absurd, by a narrow sliver, 4-3 in the Colorado Supreme Court. This is going to go to the Supreme Court of the United States, and I guarantee you can rerun this clip. When it happens, the Supreme Court of the United States will find Colorado did not have the right to take him off the ballot. For goodness sake, the leading candidate, EJ, he's the leading candidate by far. He's the only candidate, essentially in the long run here. But I just don't understand why they're so afraid of Donald Trump.
We'll play the clip back, Geraldo, if we have the opportunity. But EJ, you respond to that.
Well, first of all, if I'm going to make a prediction, I think the Supreme Court's going to punt too, but we'll see what they do. But it's good that Geraldo mentioned Jefferson Davis, because Jefferson Davis was never convicted of anything. It was assumed that this was self-enforcing, and all the Confederates who were barred from office actually applied for amnesty. So they accepted that this section applied to them. And I think it's very important also to note that to rule him out does not require any action by Congress or another court. And by the way, I am not saying that Colorado should be able to do this and Alabama should be able to do something else. I think the court should take this very seriously and tell us very clearly its view. Does this part of the amendment bar somebody who did what Donald Trump did from office? Either it does, in which case he shouldn't be on any ballots, or it doesn't, in which case he should be eligible for every ballot. But this is about protecting the Constitution and democracy. That's the paradox here. I get the argument, because I once thought this was true myself, that democracy has put Trump on the ballot. But if you've got somebody who tried to overthrow the constitutional system, the people who wrote the 14th Amendment said, you don't let somebody else do that the next time. And the last point is eligibility. I can't vote for a brilliant 34-year-old for president because the Constitution wouldn't let me.
Geraldo.
Go ahead, Geraldo.
Right. As one of the leading columnists for the Washington Post, compare the actions of President Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy to Donald Trump, the presidential candidate and former president? I cannot believe that. 600,000 people died. It was an insurrection by every measure. It was one of the bloodiest conflicts ever. It tore this country in shreds. Donald Trump is a lot of bad things. And I said at the beginning of this, I do not support him because of the bad things. But he has not been found guilty of insurrection in any court. And what you're trying to do is to prevent the voters from choosing who they want to be president. It is the pundits and it is the politicians who are absolutely trying to undermine the democratic process and say they are trying to save it as they try to kill it.
So
and
EJ,
I think, Abby, this will be revealed to be a fruitless effort as time goes.
EJ, we got to go, but I want you to just respond to that question that was posed to you by Geraldo there.
Well, no, I think that I'm not trying to deprive him of the right to run for president. He did this to himself.
But is he Jefferson Davis?
But are you comparing him to Jefferson Davis?
Jefferson Davis?
The South started the Civil War because they didn't accept the result of a free election in 1860, and the insurrectionists who
they wanted to keep slavery, for goodness sake. Listen to yourself. They started the Civil War because they wanted to keep slaves. That's what the whole thing is.
But they wanted it's ridiculous. The result of Lincoln's election because they knew that slavery was...
This is a bunch of liberal intellectuals trying to say they're smarter than everybody else. And trying to deny the American people or the Republican voters of Colorado the opportunity to vote for a guy that I don't support, but they support 1.4 million of them. And now, because of the columnists of the Washington Post or the New York Times or Lawrence Tribe or any other liberal, progressive left pundit, come on, guys.
We will have you both back.
We
will have you both
all
back
this energy.
When this will get resolved by the courts, and we will have you both back. And I'll play your clip, Geraldo, and I'll play your clip, EJ.
Please.
Whichever one is the correct one on this one. We appreciate the discussion and the debate on the air tonight. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.